Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Madhuri Raju, co-founder and partner, International Sourcing Solutions, LLC. We are excited to have Madhuri and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Blending Traditional and Modern Finance. Welcome, Madhuri. Over to you.
Thanks for that introduction, Nick. And sorry that I couldn't be on the video today. I have some bandwidth issues at my end. At International Sourcing Solutions, we are currently offering digital transformation services to higher education, manufacturing, and healthcare sectors. Personally, I have over 20 years of experience in healthcare and manufacturing sector, in leading analytics and digital transformations in finance, sales, marketing, supply chain, purchasing, and risk management. Today, I am glad to welcome the esteemed panelists, Lisa Cummings, Thomas DeFabrizio, and John Hugo, who are leading exemplary finance organizations in their industries. We will discuss today's topic of digital transformation and its relevance in the world of finance. Before we begin, it would be great for us to get to know the panelists. So why don't we go around the room and do some introductions? Can we start off with you, Lisa?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be back. My name is Lisa Cummings. I have about 2 decades of experience in finance, leading, building, and reshaping FP&A and corporate finance teams. I've worked at a variety of different companies here in the Bay Area of San Francisco, Gap Inc., HP, Twitter, and have a fun adventure lined up coming soon. And I think the digital transformation journey is something that's been near and dear to my heart, particularly joining a tech high growth company like Twitter and seeing what is happening on the inside with companies that are moving so fast and part of a really big growth cycle, and getting to more intimately understand the needs of the finance teams and some things that have been not addressed as we're moving fast, and some of the ways that the teams have adapted to bridge gaps. So excited to be here, and I will pass it off to John.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Madhuri and Argyle for sponsoring this. My name is John Hugo. I'm VP of Financial Products and Go-to-Market at Workday. Even though I'm with a software company now, I spent 25 years in audit. I'm dating myself, but back when it was the big 8. And then telecom and cable for 10 years. And prior to Workday, I was the SVP and corporate controller at Lifetime Fitness. And we were a very, very early adopter of Workday. We purchased and deployed HCM, financials, payroll of Workday in 2008. So we were customer 12. So 7 years ago, I left Lifetime and joined Workday. And what I do now is speak with finance teams and HR teams as well, but about digital transformation, especially in the financial area, and trying to convince CFOs and their finance teams that moving to the cloud and finance is safe, and actually it's a risk minimization move. So happy to be on the panel, and I'll pass it to you, Thomas.
Thanks, John, Lisa, and Madhuri. I will finish this up here. My name is Thomas DeFabrizio. I have over 20 years of finance, accounting, and operations experience across multiple industries, multiple locations. Currently, I head up the finance and accounting operations at a global travel technology company. This allows employees to book discount hotel, car, recreation accommodations as part of their employee benefits. Happy to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you all for your introduction. And so we have travel, technology, uh, and technology represented here today, right? And as we answer the question, it will be great if you could also provide success stories from your efforts in the various areas you've been involved in and the failure modes to avoid for our audience today. After each question, I will also glean through the audience questions and relay those to the panelists for the response. And if you see any question you want to pick up as you speak, you're free and welcome to do so as well. So today's discussions will be centered specifically around the what, why, and how of digital transformation. First, the what. What have we seen? In the last 3 years, traditional finance has seen a pivotal change from being manual, time-consuming process to being automated and workflow-driven. In manufacturing, healthcare alone, where I've been, there was a push to automate even prior to the pandemic, to achieve faster reporting and thereby enable remediation for the risks and issues in the business. Although we call it digital transformation, I'm sure you'll all agree it should be called process improvement or process enhancement, right? So, because that's the underlying driver of digital transformation. So my first question to you all is, from your experience, how have you seen traditional finance evolve over the past couple years? And how have your organization steered through this change? Please feel free to share any real world examples. John, would you lead this question for us, please?
Sure, Madhuri. It's actually funny, before the four of us got on this call, we were talking about finance in the past, and there was a lot of companies that, we all used Excel and Google Sheets now, but we're discovering that they're still used a lot by a lot of companies. And, we've obviously evolved a long ways from that. But I think the biggest thing for me, having been a practitioner for 25 years, and almost always with public companies, or I took 2 companies public, but always dealing with 10Qs and 10Ks and the whole month-end close and financial reporting. But you think about those 25 years, and I was always looking backwards. So I was always looking back in time, recreating numbers that happened in the past. And I think with technology now, and I'm sure with Lisa and Thomas and their experience as well, finance accounting is becoming much more predictive. So instead of looking in the rearview mirror all the time, we're trying to have a more predictive nature to what we do, and forecasting is more important. I think COVID kind of escalated the whole process, because once that hit, a lot of organizations needed to be able to pivot much quicker. And to pivot, you need to have a more improved forecasting capability. So that's probably been the biggest change I've seen. Lisa, how about you at Twitter and
yes,
in your career?
I would certainly say, I think for the finance team, the desire to have more predictive tools. We went from Hyperion Essbase on-prem to cloud, which was a very, very extensive sort of 2-year project for us, which I'm sure I'll get to talk about a couple times during this time together. And in the migration from on-prem to cloud, we were actually able to build in a lot of new features, which provided a driver-based capability to forecasting, which was really great. And so I would say, I would echo what you said around the predictive nature around the work that we do. One thing that I would add, and I think it gets sometimes lost in sort of like this exuberance of digital transformation and tools, et cetera, et cetera. But I find is very important is really the mindset of the teams, and the mindset of being more operator focused, or quote, think like owners. I know that term gets sort of passed around a lot. I've seen finance teams, my own team, my peers' teams get very excited about these new tools. And it's like more data, more analytics. And so particularly on the FP&A business unit facing side, more data, more analytics, more predictive abilities to the way that we work sometimes can actually make the business partnership a little bit more strained, and we lose sort of the plot a bit around being operator focused, really helping to enable the business with insightful data and data that ties back to their priorities. And so I just want to make sure that gets mentioned here, because I have, and I've been, during my time away from Twitter for the last couple months, I've been networking and speaking to a lot of different CFOs there. And it's almost like it's like almost everybody got together and chatted about this somewhere, but it's a reoccurring theme that I've been hearing around this tie-in of digital transformation and particularly FP&A teams being thought partners to the business and thinking like operators with the data that they have. So that is something that I certainly was seeing and want to share.
Yeah, Thomas, I'll let you go here in a second. I just wanted to add on to that real quick, Lisa, but I spend a good portion of my time with retail and hospitality prospects with Workday, and almost all the time now, chief operating officers, general managers of stores, they're the ones that need to be involved as well, because they actually get that data. They need the data quickly. In finance and accounting, we always prepare the information and then turn it over to operations. So why don't they get it at the same time, as long as it's accurate? So I'm glad you mentioned the operational aspect.
Yeah, John, that's great. And Lisa, perfect. Yeah, I'll echo some of the things you said and add a few more of color from my experience. So probably over the last 5 years or so, 3 main areas I see have been really making that transformation in the finance industry. That's really technological advances, changing regulatory landscapes, and shifting business models. So Lisa, to your point about on-prem, those cloud-based solutions are really where the business is going to be moving in finance. So cloud-based, we think about it, but it offers better flexibility, improved security, and really it seamlessly integrates at all the new modules that come, particularly Workday, all shifts in there, and it allows folks in operations, finance, to be able to focus more on decision-making items. And so I know you mentioned, Lisa, with your transition there to a cloud-based solution. I just finished up an Oracle NetSuite financial implementation about 5 months ago at this point. Good process. Took thankfully less than 2 years, but it was definitely a challenge there. So tying off to that, the digitalization of that financial process. So the cloud-based can help you do it. There's other tools that can help you do it. But ultimately, when you automate routine, repetitive tasks such as those invoice processing, financial reconciliations, you're going to get improved efficiency and accuracy. So right off the bat, NetSuite Cloud helped us automate that 3-way reconciliation, the bank, the payment processor, and the transactional system data we had here. So save time, allow the folks in the team to focus on more value-added ideas. And then I mentioned, the changing regulatory landscapes, and that's an interesting component. I think it's changing traditional finance. You got to be a little bit more on the ball. And I'll mention one thing. We had I've been over recently two acquisitions, but one that involved youth sports, and there's some so basically GDPR, and then there's some particular stuff in California around youth sports, youth data. So that's one of the things we had to get into, with the legal team. But those things are changing how finance looks at deals, what it takes. I mean, it almost killed the deal. So those things are really coming up. So you got to model that in, what it takes to secure the data. I think I read today that Facebook Meta was fined like $1.3 billion or something in Europe because of the way they transfer data to the US. So it's really key to think about that. And I know, John, you mentioned, but some areas that I'm not as familiar with that I will be in the future are those advanced analytics, predictive modeling. Those are really going to be like the big data stuff. And then the expansion of fintech solutions. So like peer-to-peer lending networks, robo-advisors, mobile payment systems. I don't have exactly the best experience to speak on those, but I want to touch on those as that's like an evolving tune from traditional finance into the future.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think a big part of the how is also the tools and the solutions that we deploy, right, as part of the digital transformation. I personally have managed the rollout of multi-stack digital transformation solutions And they include things like RPA and API tech stacks. Now, those are like very techie type, terms for things like ChatGPT, right? So that's more like you could call it, an API tech stack enabled by RPA. You have all these workflow solutions that you could deploy right out of the box with ChatGPT. There's also several out-of-the-box solutions today for all the different functions in finance, be it P2P accounting, budgeting, invoicing, cash flow management, or expense tracking, or even payroll management, right? How can you forget that with Workday? Um, so, and we have tools like Hyperion, NetSuite, both from Oracle, not cheap. I myself did a multi-site Hyperion deployment at GM. It wasn't cheap. We had a lot of it, many stakeholders to manage, a lot of hand-holding to do with training. Wasn't very user-friendly. We had to have training classes, training documents put out there so people could be used to it. Um, so my question to you all is, what tools or solutions are most valuable to the finance function these days in accelerating your digital transformation journey? Are there any specific ones that jump out of the box and say, these are really crucial, or these have really helped you in your journey? And in this question, Lisa, would you like to lead this question?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. And I promise John did not pay me to say this, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Workday. But first, before I talk about it, I think, digital transformation, the two things that sort of really rise to the top, have risen to the top more recently for the team at Twitter, are around like data integrity, of course, like ways that we can create more, we can serve up more stable data and really preserve the integrity of the data, and then aggregation of data. And those two sort of ideas and concepts have been intertwined in various projects. I think probably a lot of folks on the call can have at some point in the last probably year or less had data integrity issues as they look to aggregate multi-system data, whether it's around revenue or expense data. One that really was challenging for us at Twitter was headcount data. And it was fascinating for me to go from a company of 100,000 people plus to a company at the time of 3,000 and have headcount be something we talk about so frequently. And so as the organization grew from 3,000 to 7,500, it became even more like an unfortunate topic that our finance teams were bogged down with. And I think that you can imagine, a team of 50, 100 analysts and managers and directors spending half their time talking about headcount really isn't value add. And so we, one of the struggles on the corporate finance side was the data integrity between what we were getting versus what the HR teams were getting and reporting out to our board and our executive team. And so we needed a way to aggregate all of the data. We turned to Workday. We housed the data, the sort of like the source of record on the HR side with Workday, but then we turned to Workday as a solution to help bridge us from the HR data into the finance databases. And so we did not get to finish the project because of the acquisition, but we did quite a bit of vetting of several different products. I know ServiceNow has one, a tailored solution of bridging various system data, but that was, I think Workday, through our process of our RFP and meeting with various stakeholders, was the one that we went with for headcount management. So I guess without further ado, I guess I turn to you, John, to talk a little bit more about tools. And if you wanted to go into, if you are close to the headcount solution with Workday, it'd be great to hear more about it.
Yeah, just not touting Workday, but our previous HR tool, we did the same thing, Lisa. We're sitting in a boardroom going through an SEC document, and it comes to headcount, and we argue for an hour on it. It's like, this should not happen. And having that information real time, which true cloud companies today have, that information it's nanoseconds. It's not a batch process away. It's available and ready at that moment. But one of the telling tales, I think, of tools is prior to consolidation. I mean, obviously you want to simplify your technology as much as possible, even though it seems like everything is complex these days. Simplification is the answer. And I swear, when I was at Lifetime, our most requested capital asset for our accounting team was monitors. And you would walk by accounting cubes and people would have 4 or 5 monitors up, and it looked like a NASA control station because they had a different application on every screen. The goal is to simplify all that and have one user interface that, whether you're in human capital or financials or payroll, or even operationally, having a single user interface makes such a difference. And that's true across functions as well. Cloud-enabled solutions do that, not just my company, but other companies as well. It's that consolidation of systems. And the last thing I want to touch on before turning it to Thomas is having that single solution, single user interface on your mobile as well, and having that access to work from home, on the top of the mountain where I live in Colorado, wherever you're at, you can manage your system through that mobile app on a single user interface. So those tools, we're getting there, but a lot of companies still have the NASA look and feel when you go through their finance departments. Thomas?
Great. Thanks, John. And I promise you, I will not say the word Workday. Okay, we won't be talking Workday on mine, although it's a great tool. Ultimately, I think I'm right there with you that the tools that are most valuable in this digital transformation are the cloud-based financial management systems. Particularly, cloud technology, offers that scalable, secure, and accessible platforms. Johnny mentioned mobile, but ultimately, the on-prem was always going to go. It's really great. The cloud, again, does real-time integration, streamline processes, improve the collaboration, and provide better insight for decision-making. I mentioned previously, moving from an on-prem to an Oracle Cloud has been really great. Again, I mentioned automated some items, some tasks that the accounting team we used to do in Excel, save some time there. Moving on the list, so advanced analytics and business intelligence. So, in the modern world, we rely on advanced analytics and business tools. So we're moving down the path of Power BI. It's a Microsoft tool. It allows us to help trend analysis. And a lot of that is, to the point Lisa made, depending on the data, they say garbage in, garbage out. One of the questions was, do you do a cleansing exercise before you implement any tools of transformation? The piece I'll answer that, I believe the people are so important in that process. You need subject matter experts to really understand the data, because otherwise you're going to put not so great stuff in, and it will not allow you to make the best business decisions on the back end of that. Moving down the list, artificial intelligence and machine learning. We don't use it as much as we want, but where we're moving into it is in fraud detection. So on my company's global platform, you can book, for example, tickets to SeaWorld, tickets to Universal Studios. We've seen fraud there. So the fraud detection tools and machine learning will help identify if someone's got a nuance to their name, different email, but kind of same card, et cetera. So a lot of things there that we want to prevent fraud. We're trying to get down that path with a couple different companies. Digital payments, digital platforms, global access to the payment system is really critical. We use a couple different payment processes. One in particular, Stripe, really great for international business. The merchant ID there really works well for us. So wanted to mention that is. Being able to take a payment overseas may not, may be super simple in some minds, but it's not. Sometimes you use Secure 3DS to help prevent fraud, or banks requirements. So there's a lot of the fundamental things that those digital payment providers can help you with. One of the other ones I'm not familiar with, but I do believe are tools that will help in the future are the blockchain and the ledger technology. I think that's going to really revolutionize items like supply chain, payments, auditing. It's going to reduce risk, but I don't have much experience in that. But I think that's on a near view mirror, as you could say.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that blockchain, Tom, because that's quite a very, it's an underused tool today, but I'm glad it's gaining some traction as we speak. People are using it more like, in the recall area, like Walmart used it for their sourcing of food so that they could track down their food recalls quickly and publish those out. Um, there's many business use cases, and I think we've barely scratched the surface for blockchain. So it's a very underutilized tool and technology. We have a couple of questions from the audience. How are each of you using RPA? Specifically, it's around RPA and AI. And I did recall you mentioned a couple of things that you in your business, Tom, that you use AI for the fraud detection and all that stuff. But are you using RPA? Any of you using RPA in your tech stack for any specific business case?
No, not really. Machine learning is the word we
Okay.
use a lot. It's just detecting trends over massive amounts of transactions.
Perfect. Yeah, this is more at the technical level, and I guess the
Mhm.
audience here is not at the level that they could give you an answer for that. All right. So let's move on to the next section of how. So it's important that when we talk about digital transformation, we also need to talk about how we are doing our digital transformation. What I mean by that is the success of switching over from traditional to modern finance processes and tools has been largely driven by three things: right people, right process, right systems. Culture change is therefore a key element of all transformations, and change management is a big part of it. Right?
Mhm.
And that's like change management is a word. I think it needs to be etched in gold because that's pretty much going to be driving the success of your digital transformation initiatives. Without a sound change management plan, the drivers cannot have a sound interplay in the digital transformation that may have taken months or years to plan and implement literally fails, right? So now your questions in this area. First question: how are CFOs and their teams successfully blending traditional manual finance processes with the new and modern ones? Do you have any specific examples to share? Tom, do you wanna lead us on this question?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think in the realm of technology, it's an ever evolving financial landscape here. So for me, it comes down to leveraging the technology and automation while recognizing the value of the human expertise. Okay, and I'll give you some examples about how I think about it, how we blend the processes. So first one, I'll mention it probably twice already, but implementing, so digitalizing, automating those routine tasks. Okay, and that's part of the tool and things we're going to need to do is implementing a cloud-based accounting software. That can automatically reconcile transactions, generate financial reports, manage accounts payable, accounts receivable. So what that does, it frees up valuable time for those finance team members to work on more strategic items. And so for us, NetSuite Cloud has been able to do that. So that's how we've been able to blend the traditional and the new kind of age cloud solution, automating some items, those routine tasks, auto invoicing, et cetera, allowing the team to focus on more strategic activities. The next one will be implementing advanced analytics. That's how I kind of think about it. So the tools that you would implement, like we're doing Power BI, to be able to hone in the data, present it in a way that we can make actionable items on. So utilizing those tools and technology, that enables us to analyze those large data sets, intake it very quickly, make accurate decisions, on a daily basis if need be. Going down the list as I think about it, I think about really the environment of having one area. Now, John, you mentioned it, but basically integrating the modern financial tools that play well with other systems. So integrating your enterprise resource planning tool, your ERP system, your customer relationship management tool, so everyone can access data real time, and that ultimately will allow team members to work well together. So it's really about encouraging that collaboration with cross-functional teams. And the last piece that I'll mention, really, I think is maybe question through there was, hey, are employees worried about new automation capabilities and whether or not they'll take the jobs? Most importantly is transparency, but ultimately developing strategic financial leadership. So technology's here, but CFOs, we want to encourage our teams to engage in continuous learning and professional development. So we need to make sure that those programs are in place. Everything that's going to be kept, so our employees can be kept up with those modern financial practices, so that they're on the forefront of this technology and not be left behind. Because we need really people to come on and really leverage these things. Again, it's leveraging the automation and technology, but you really need to hone in the leverage, the wealth of knowledge that human people have.
So one of those things, and thanks for taking that question, I think one key thing that we need to remember when these automation capabilities are put in place, I think one thing that the tools are the second step in the process. It's the first step is the process itself, right? So how do you redefine the process, and who are the players in the process? So once you have your players defined, there's no question of somebody feeling insecure about their job taken away, because tools are only making your job easier. They're not taking away your job. People are needed. There are players needed. Somebody has to go and approve in the workflow, right? In the past, they had to spend 10 hours. Now the scale is larger. They can probably approve more invoices, or they can, it automatically gets notified. You don't have to go run a report. So your job is getting easier. It's not necessarily getting eliminated. That's my, take on this. But
sorry, go ahead, Thomas.
I was going to add, if you're implementing new tools, software, pay for the educational part that comes with it. I know for NetSuite, they've got a book of programs that anyone can go in and take. You pay for the cloud learning, and then they'll hit you on like, hey, you do this for your company. Same thing with anything that really shows your employees that you want them to develop along with the automation function.
Yeah, and I would say sort of alternatively, from the employee seat, being a part of such a influential and impactful scaling exercise that you're learning through, and then you can repeat it in another organization, has just created value for yourself. Mm-hmm. That's something that, let's pretend your job does get, your job is not as fulfilling as it was before because it's automated and nothing new has come on your plate. You do have a new tool out there that others are seeking, and they want that expertise. So I would actually argue, like, being part of that digital transformation and that scaling effort, which is highly sought after by other organizations out there, actually creates more value for yourself than less.
We were cut out of the same cloth, all four of us, because I was going to chat. Madhuri mentioned people, process, and tools, and we've talked a little bit about tools, but from the process standpoint, an automated business process framework that runs everything you do, not only from an accounting, financial planning, HR standpoint, even operationally, where once that's set, that it almost automates your entire financial and accounting process. So it flags you when next step's ready, and it drives everything you do. At my previous company, we had an individual, she was an accounts payable clerk, great at it, but understood the whole procure to pay process. And when we went live with our new tool, Workday, she got involved with the deployment, and she became an expert in it. And she actually went over and helped support from a process standpoint. So to your point, Lisa, digital transformation creates new opportunities that maybe didn't exist before. But now here's this person who used to be an AP clerk. Now they're talking at seminars on procure to pay and transformation. So the opportunities are amazing. But, I think that one question, what things won't change? I think we'll always have debits on the left, credits on the right. I'm pretty sure.
Your accounting 101 doesn't change, right?
Yeah. Pacioli in 1494 invented double entry bookkeeping, and that hasn't changed since. So, but there are tasks that are always going to remain. But I think even people who don't, or maybe not comfortable coming out of that comfort zone, to move on to more of an analytical or thought processing, there's always going to be roles that need to be done. And I think that's going to exist indefinitely.
Yep, thank you. So the next question here is, what recommendations can you make for organizations that are struggling to move away from a traditional finance process? There was a question on what do we keep as is, but what recommendations can you give for those that are struggling to move away from the traditional processes to embrace new technologies? So John, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, it's kind of what I just mentioned there. I mean, we've gone from an digital transformation from an acceptance phase to an acceleration phase. So 15 years ago, when I had to tell our audit committee of our board that I was looking at this new cloud tool, they said, cloud in the financials, we can't do that. There's so much risk there. And now it's shifted entirely to all of that risk is with that SaaS provider. So my company, Workday, takes on the risk that used to sit in your IT department. And that's true with accounting, business processes, everything we've talked about. You're really shifting the risk to the new SaaS provider. But like I mentioned with the individual that creating new opportunities, some of them we don't know what they are yet. I mean, this whole data analytics and where we're going with AI and ML, that's going to create opportunities as well. I just think at this point in time, we don't know exactly what some of them are, but to that last question, where we're going to have roles that are staying the same, we're also going to have opportunities to advance based on unknown technology.
Yeah. How do you address reluctance from change from employees when implementing new technologies or automations? So that's in the vein of the same, in the same light. Lisa, John, you've mentioned a few. Lisa, Tom, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think change management is such a critical component to bringing to life a new technology in an organization and a team. And there's many components of change management, planning, communication, training, support, and measurement that I could take the question. But one that is one that I have seen time and time again surface if it's not done up front and if it's not done at the right levels is buy-in. And so buy-in of the team, the leadership team, the analysts, I think is so critical. And ways of establishing buy-in are really listening to the teams around what exactly it is that they need, listening to those experts, the primary users. You may get a manager that says, I really want this visualization in this project, or I want speed or data integrity, but you may actually hear from the analysts that the day-to-day and bringing to life some of these priorities actually focuses on different functionality or data integrity or something that might not be uncovered by only surveying managers and above. Buy-in, I think where I've seen buy-in, and I mentioned we went through a 2-year project at Twitter going from on-prem to cloud. It was very clear to me midway through the project when it felt like things were starting to kind of go sideways. Buy-in, if it had been established, was sort of lost. And so it's something that you have to continually go back to with communication and feedback loops. The broader audience, the more concisely you can communicate with them, either around roadmaps or achievement to milestones or around how you're thinking through prioritization, it continues to keep the buy-in that hopefully was established early on strong and healthy throughout the project. Feedback loops also, I think I always make the joke of like retroing the retro. People love retros, and it's like you can just like kill it feedback to death. But I think quick feedback cycles or even channels where folks can go and escalate something or raise feedback around, like, I have to sit in this meeting every other day of the week, and I'm finding that our consultants aren't prepared, or we are not staying on task, or I feel like we're not prioritizing. So having those feedback loops to, again, keep the buy-in healthy and the communication of the stakeholders, I think is really critical, particularly around long projects, but short ones as well. And it doesn't even have to be digital transformation. Buy-in is something you can take into your leadership role for other endeavors.
Sure, thanks.
Sure.
So with 10 minutes till the end, I want to also touch that final aspect of digital transformation, the why. We have all talked about analytics and data, and that lies at the crux of why we do these things, right? And why is data analytics part of the why? Digital transformation isn't done because we also want it, right? We are all aiming to speed up our processes. We are aiming to reduce errors and reporting time. Reports can be the source of immense information about the health of our business, and the sooner we get to the bottom of our issues and risks facing our business, the faster we can close any gaps we see in our KPI, right? Unleashing analytics through data is the underlying reason we all want to get there. So with that in mind, what are some of the near-term opportunities and challenges you are facing, around the evolution of analytics and data within your company?
Yeah, I could take this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so you mentioned the evolution there. So enhanced data collection, integration, adoption of data-driven decisions, and collaborating across departments. So for me, the near-term opportunities at my company, probably across multiple companies as well, is personalized customer insights. And so when you can utilize the data, you get really a better understanding of the customer preferences and behaviors. And that would allow everybody to tailor those experiences directly to them for those offerings. I also see it as a risk management item. I mentioned it earlier, but advanced analytics can aid in those identifying potential risks, detecting fraud, and really overall just strengthening our risk management framework. For me, some of the challenges that I would see that the team spoke to, Lisa mentioned a little earlier, is pretty much data quality and integrity. So obtaining that accurate, reliable, and relevant data from a bunch of different sources is a tricky thing to master. So that's really going to be an ongoing challenge there. And then the last thing I'll mention is the skill and talent gap. So if you want to build a strong analytical team with the right skill set and expertise, that can be challenging due to that high demand right now for those data professionals, and really just the evolutionary nature of those tools and techniques. It's tough to fill in. I think just overall talent is a little bit scarce now in this time, but ultimately that's where I see. So I'd love to pass it on.
That's awesome, Thomas. I look at the biggest opportunity is there's so much data. Now my biggest challenge is there's so much data. I've heard two buzzwords. One of them was about 12 years ago, the term big data. It was all the buzz, and then it got quiet. Now we're starting to finally see what's coming out of all the information. And the other one we mentioned earlier was blockchain. Is the same thing. There's a lot of buzz around it, but I think people are starting to figure out how they can truly utilize that now. But the biggest risk for me on the data side is not having real-time information. So even if it's now, an hour or 2 hours or a day late, that information can already be stale because people need information that's truly real time. So, if you have data that's old or data that's not reliable, then your risk increases exponentially. And we try to capture all of that data and analytics within our tenants, within our customers. So it's in an enclosed circle. You hear all about the risks of ChatGPT and AI right now, and that's because it's pulling information from, everywhere. And there's a lot of risk that information is inaccurate. So I think it's important to have information and data that's enclosed in an environment that you control, and then you feel a lot more comfortable that information is accurate and timely.
I think what Thomas and John shared, I echo 100%. I think, and the only thing I would add in there, if I had to add anything, is around the challenge of prioritization. I've seen and I felt firsthand teams get burnt out by working on multiple transformation products at a time. And I think it's very, very important to prioritize your biggest impact projects first. And I think there's also, and it's not settling and it's not, so long as it's thought through, a waste of time. I think there are some other bridge solutions out there for problems that aren't like a full example, like migration from on-prem to cloud, or some of these other larger endeavors that we've talked about. We actually started to leverage Google Apps Script quite a bit at Twitter. And it's, I think it can be a bit scrappy and it is powerful, but there were ways that we could get some low hanging fruit or, sort of address some low hanging fruit of ways to free up time and sort of digitally transform in a light way some of the processes, particularly on AVFs and pulling data into some of our standardized forms. So prioritization is something I would say is just always a big challenge with this.
Yes. So yes, with those golden nuggets coming out of the panelists today, we have the data integrity and the quality that needs to be at the crux of every data and analytics initiative that's powering the digital transformation, and prioritization, because we can't have infinite resources. None of us do. So prioritization is a key factor we need to consider. With that, I think we are almost at the end of the panel discussion today. And there's a final question. How do you improve buy-in?
Sure, I can start this and would love to hear from Thomas or John to add in. Improving buy-in, I think it's important to think through the stakeholders that you are sourcing feedback and that you are engaging. You want to have spokes individuals, you want to have advocates out there in the broader team. So I think ensuring that you have the right sort of selection of individuals that you're bringing in closely. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, communication. Some of these larger projects, it can feel overwhelming, sort of the fire hose of communication as you're, balancing your day-to-day job, and you might not be as close to the working team. But I think making sure that you have sort of regular and very concise, tight communication out to the broader team around progress is a really important way to continue to keep that buy-in, which I think gets lost sometimes as you feel as though you may be falling behind milestones or overwhelmed with the project. But I think ensuring that you're continuing to communicate with stakeholders on progress is a way to keep that buy-in sort of healthy and alive.
That's right. So keeping the right stakeholders engaged with the communication, timely communication. Well said. Thank you so much, Lisa. So with this, I think we've had a very lively and useful discussion today around the key factors around any digital transformation initiative in company, any size. So I think thank you so much today for your time, Lisa, John, Tom. It's been wonderful having you here. Thank you so much to Argyle for having me moderate another panel discussion. I had a wonderful time today here talking about these key questions out with the panelists today. So with that, over to you, Nick.
Great. Well, thank you all for such an insightful panel discussion. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content, and have a great rest of your day.